Now that U.S. Airways and American Airlines are merged and operating as a single carrier, we are down to 3 legacy carriers in the U.S. Those I'm talking about: American Airlines, United, and Delta. Hey everybody, welcome to the Abroaders Travel Podcast, your weekly meetup with thousands of entrepreneurs, hustlers, creators, nomads, ninjas, wanderers, and world changers, all seeking to build the skills and connections to live a life without borders. If you want to learn more about what we do or download our entire podcast archive, check out the website, abroaders.com. Happy Wednesday morning and welcome to another episode of the Abroaders Podcast. I'm Eric, checking in with you guys from Salvador, Brazil. And hopefully we're going to be able to get off a whole episode. It is Sunday. Our new podcast editor, Kate, who's doing an awesome job. We gave her the episode last week at the very last minute, and she pulled everything together and put out a really great show for us. But this week, I don't want to put her in another jam, so recording a little bit earlier. And it also happens to be officially bad music played at loud volume day here in Salvador. The neighborhood is getting a little festive nearby, so apologies in advance for any of that background music. Today, I want to talk with you guys a little bit about the U.S. programs. Now that U.S. Airways and American Airlines are merged and operating as a single carrier, we are down to 3 legacy carriers in the U.S. Those I'm talking about: American Airlines, United, and Delta. Obviously, some other really good carriers in the United States as well, especially for domestic and specific locations. But I want to talk a little bit about the legacy carriers because those are the frequent flyer programs that really give you the most access. I think Southwest is a really unique program and definitely some huge value if you can get the Southwest Companion Pass. But we've already talked about that quite a bit on other shows. And now that U.S. Airways has merged, we're now operating with the American Airlines program rules. And so I just wanted to recap some of the core pieces of each of those programs, sort of how the mileage chart works, what kinds of routing rules, where you can search for award space, and how you can get the best availability and so forth. So I'm just going to recap those today with American, United, and Delta. Hopefully give you guys some insights as to which programs you should be picking when you're trying to decide how to allocate your point strategy, which balances you want to be building up for your next trip. Show notes for today's episode are going to be available at abroaders.com/US programs. All right, guys, so before we get into the discussion about the U.S. carriers, I wanted to go into one quick card recommendation. There's a new offer out on the Citi Prestige card. Now, this is not one of the cheaper cards in terms of annual fees. This one is marketed at some of the high spenders. It's kind of similar to the American Express Platinum card and a couple of those other ones that have big benefits but also a big price tag. So this one comes with a $450 annual fee. But you probably shouldn't write it off right away, even if you are a little bit cash strapped, because there are some pretty big benefits, especially in the first year. So the award is 50,000 thank you points after 3,000 spend in 90 days. As you may remember, thank you points transfer to 11 different airline partners. I personally don't really find this currency nearly as exciting or interesting as American Express, Starwood Preferred Guest, or Ultimate Rewards, the other 3 major transferable currencies. And the reason being is that Citi doesn't have any US-based carriers, the ones we're going to be talking about today, as transfer partners. And so it makes it a little bit harder if you are based in the United States to be able to use these points. They don't partner with Delta, American, United, or Southwest. They do, however, partner with Air France Flying Blue and Singapore Kris Flyer, which could be good opportunities to use those points depending on the context, especially Air France's Flying Blue promo awards. That's generally when they offer economy and business class flights at 50% or 25% off the normal price and mile. So if you've got a flight coming up that's going to fall into one of those, that could be a great option. The big benefit with Singapore's Kris Flyer is that they have really good availability for their own flight. If you've got like United or another Star Alliance members miles, it's harder to book on Singapore because they hold some of those award seats for their own members. And so having Citi points that transfer right into the Kris Flyer program gives you access to those seats. A couple other benefits to cover with the card here. Besides the points, if you don't decide to transfer them, they're still worth $500, even if you just sort of convert them into cash. So they're more than enough to cover the annual fee. You also get a $250 airline fee credit. So this is similar to what the American Express Platinum card offers with their airline fee credit. Even better because Amex offers $200 and this card is $250. So right there, as long as you're going to at least spend $250 on airline fees, you're knocking that annual fee down to a flat $200. And that's an annual benefit. The other thing that is key is you're going to get global entry access refunded. That's $100. It is a one-time fee, so you're only going to be able to take advantage of that once. The $100 fee, and that is what's going to get you your priority security pass, trusted traveler program access, and also the kiosk check-in going through customs with your passport. I personally really value that benefit because it makes it possible not only to just have a more relaxing experience when I'm flying back to the US, I can get to the lounge quicker, enjoy my connection time in a place that's not standing in front of the customs waiting in line to try and get my passport stamped. It's just a really quick process, and it also makes it possible for me to push it with connection time quite a bit more. You know, sometimes if you're in Los Angeles or Miami, it can take 2 hours to get through the passport control. And with global entry, it's literally a couple of minute process. You scan your fingerprints, scan your passport, and print a ticket, hand it off to the guy on the way out, and you are in business. So definitely something to look into. Last but not least, there's 2 lounge benefits that come with the Citi Prestige card. So there's Admiral Club Access, which is not the same as an Admirals Club membership. Admirals Club is American Airlines lounges, and they're also going to be incorporating all the U.S. Airways legacy lounges into that group. So you'll have access to all those. But with the Prestige card, it's only when you're flying U.S. or American Airlines that day. So it's not just like blanket access to the lounge. You got to have a ticket from American Airlines that same day of travel. The other lounge benefit is way more interesting to me, and that is Priority Pass Select. So this is another one that comes with American Express Platinum. You have to request it, but they mail you a Priority Pass card, and that gets you into hundreds of international lounges. Not very much of a presence in the US, but it's great abroad. And the big difference with the Citi Prestige is that you get guest privileges, which is not something that comes with the Priority Pass you have with the Platinum card. So if I'm traveling with a friend or family member, it's going to be an extra $27 just to get them into the lounge, which is a huge pain. It always makes it difficult because then really can't enjoy and get full value out of the lounge unless you want to pay a little extra for your travel partner to come with you. So that's one thing to keep in mind. I think you get up to 2 partners with the Priority Pass that comes with this card. Other bit of news I wanted to just quickly mention regarding lounge access is that the Chase Inc. has decided to eliminate the lounge access benefit, and you still have a chance to get on there and get it for 1 year. So if you enroll before the 30th of April, if you've got a Chase Inc. card, that could be the Chase Inc. Bold or the Chase Inc. Plus, you're going to get 1 year of membership with Lounge Club. Honestly, it's not the best benefit. You're only going to get 2 free visits, but those can be really nice. You know, just if you don't travel that much, you usually have lounge access in another way, but you find yourself at an airport that only has a Lounge Club lounge. This is a nice benefit. After 2 free visits, you're going to pay about $27 a visit. So worth giving Inc. a call and setting that up and just asking them to include the benefit. They'll send you out the card and get it for 1 year. But after that, they're not going to be doing the lounge access anymore with the Inc. card. Moving on to one redemption promotion I wanted to mention here. Delta is offering 10,000 miles back on select redemptions. The requirements are that the redemption is round trip and require at least 50,000 miles. So these are for main cabin, so economy redemptions. But 10,000 miles back is going to be up to 20% if you're redeeming 50,000 miles. And that's a big deal. Definitely going to make it a little bit more cost effective to use those Sky Miles. And this is available for travel completed between April 8th and August 31st. So the other big core restriction that you got to keep in mind here is it's only on Delta operated flights. And if your award itinerary includes any other flights by partners, it's not going to be eligible. So one more time, round trip, 50,000 miles or more in coach on Delta operated flights between April 8th and August 31st, you get a 10,000 point rebate. I think that's probably a scenario where it might even be worth not taking a partner flight. So for example, if I were flying from the US to Brazil, as I did this December, I actually flew into Sao Paulo from Detroit and then took a flight on Gol. that flight on goal would have made this ineligible because it added a partner. So you may have some unique scenarios where it's actually better to just take the Delta flights and maybe buy that extra flight to get to your final destination from the gateway. Something to keep in mind. Let's move on now to talking about the 3 U.S. legacy carriers, American Airlines, United, and Delta. Starting with American, I want to cover a couple of things that I really love about American Airlines. First of all is that it's relatively easy to acquire points. Citibank has a great relationship with co-branded cards, and so you can earn quite a few American Airlines points through the Platinum Select card, the Citi Business Advantage, or the Executive Advantage World Elite MasterCard. All of those have pretty substantial offers and make it pretty fast to get a couple 100,000 points. Obviously, anybody that had U.S. Airways miles had just had all of those dumped into their American account as well. So it's relatively easy to acquire. And then if you don't have enough points, you can always top off by transferring your Starwood for guest points. Those are going to transfer at 25,000 American miles per 20,000 Star points. Remember, you want to transfer in groups of 20,000 points to get that extra bonus. The next thing that I really like about American is that they've got some great partners. So first of all, they're a member of the One World Alliance, which is access to a whole bunch of different routes, both in Asia and Europe. They've got Qantas going to Australia, Japan Airlines and Cathay Pacific going to Asia, British Airways and Iberia going to Europe. So those are just a few of them. Those are really good partners in terms of overall route network. But the thing that I like the most about American is their non-alliance partners. First of all, they've got Alaska Airlines, which has some great routes. They've also got Hawaiian, which can be really nice if you're trying to go anywhere in the South Pacific. Hawaiian's got a couple of routes that take you beyond Hawaii and even all the way over to select destinations in Asia. So it can be a really nice opportunity to make a stop in Hawaii and carry your way on to Asia. Last but not least, they have some of the most generous rules in terms of booking that any of the legacy carriers. So American is the only one that allows 5-day holds. And there is an exception of Iberia and Malaysia that those two partners only allow up to a 24-hour hold. So you may not be able to actually hang on to those tickets. But the 5-day hold is critical for you to pick out the rest of your travel plans, get everything else organized before you actually confirm the ticket. It's just really, really helpful in terms of making sure that you've got all of the pieces that you want and you're able to just sit on that ticket, especially if you don't have enough points and you need to transfer in some Starwood Preferred Guest points. That's going to be a big factor because Starwood Preferred Guest points do not transfer to American immediately. It's not an instant transfer. So basically your order of operations, make sure the availability is there, put that reservation on hold, and then transfer your Starwood points. And the 5-day hold should be enough to get that ticket in time. A couple of things that are not so good about American, they have a zone-based chart which has a very, very limiting rule that's pretty unique, and that is that you're not allowed to transit a third region. So that means that if you're trying to travel, say, to Europe, you can't necessarily transit the Middle East on the way there. Or if you're trying to fly from South America to Asia, as I may need to do later this year, because of the routes, you have to transit the United States on a lot of the availability. And American prices those as 2 award tickets. So, for example, there are no direct flights from Santiago, Chile to, say, Hong Kong. Both of those are One World hubs, so you would think that it would be pretty easy to do that, but all those flights are going to transit somewhere in the United States, and that is just not allowed in American's chart. So what they do is they price those as 2 different awards. You're going to end up paying quite a bit more in terms of miles that you have to redeem for that booking. Last note to make on American is they have pretty generous rules with respect to changes. Most of the airlines have kind of settled around the $150 change fee, but one of the unique aspects of American is that you only pay that fee if you change your origin, your destination, or the award type. So that means if you go from like a Saver award to a standard award, or rather the only way you'd normally do it would be going from a standard to a Saver if that availability opens and you can save some points. So that's when you're going to have to pay the $150 fee. But the nice thing is that the date changes with the same origin and destination are free. So if you want to change your route, let's say you're going from the US to Brazil, maybe Rio de Janeiro, and you've got kind of a nasty routing with a couple of stopovers. Maybe you're stopping in Miami and then you stop in Dallas before you get to Rio. Later on, if that opens up and there's a direct way to go from your origin to your destination, you can make that change the date by a couple of days without paying that fee. Last but not least, they let you upgrade for free. So even if you're making a change from economy to business class, as long as they're both Saver Awards or both Anytime Awards for that matter, you're not going to have to pay that $150 fee. So those are the valuable qualities about American. Next, I want to talk about United. We have been recommending United points, and it's a core part of our personal point strategy and one that we push people to acquire those United points that we're helping with their travel plans. And the major reason there is that they have by far the best routing rules. So United allows a stopover and an open jaw on a round trip award, and they also allow one-way awards, which gives you unprecedented flexibility for your trip. We've mentioned this a lot of times on the show, but that stopover open jaw rule can basically turn an award ticket into a round-the-world ticket, which is extremely rare. Most of the other airlines have like a special pricing scenario where they charge you way more miles for those round-the-world trips. And it's totally possible to, say, stop in Europe on the way to Asia, stop in the Middle East on the way to Africa. Really great if you do have enough miles to redeem as a round trip and you know your schedule roughly. You can take advantage of both that open jaw and the stopover and really get a couple of extra cities. If you use both, it's possible to see at least 3 cities at your destination. So keep that in mind with United miles. Next thing is that they do not pass through fuel surcharges. So we didn't actually really cover that too much with American. They generally don't either, but they have a big exception with British Airways, and it makes American miles really crappy to go to Europe because you can end up spending between $600 and $1,000 in fuel costs if you're flying British Airways, which, as you might have guessed, has most of the routes to Europe going through London. So bottom line is with American, you're going to pay a ton on an economy ticket, even if you're using miles. With United, they just don't pass through fuel surcharges. So even if you're using one of those airlines that has pretty significant ones, you're not going to actually have to pay that out of pocket. So it's a really great thing that just reduces the overall cost of booking that award ticket. They've also got a great network of partners in Star Alliance, especially for premium cabins. I love Singapore Airlines, love Swiss and Lufthansa. There's also Thai Airways. ANA is really nice as well for flights to Asia. So definitely probably the best availability in terms of partners. One World is nice, but Star Alliance still has more members, more routes. And I think that's one of the big advantages to having United miles, especially if you want to go to places that are a little bit harder to get to. You're just going to have more airlines operating and ultimately more options. As far as earning points, Chase has a whole bunch of co-branded cards that earn points for United, including the United Explorer card, which has a personal and a business version. There's a couple of more premium cards that are co-branded as well with slightly higher annual fees, but other opportunities for sign-up bonuses. And Chase Ultimate Rewards is an instant transfer partner for United. So that means your Chase Sapphire and Inc. family of business cards all are going to be able to help you accumulate United points. That makes those points pretty dang easy to acquire and makes it a lot more possible to build up enough for yourself or possibly even for yourself and a travel companion to be able to make the same trip. So that's a really nice thing. As far as the downsides for United, I would say the website is one of them. A lot of people like it, but I find that it really doesn't do a good job of showing all the possible routings. And so if availability is tight, which it often is for premium cabin, especially from Asia, lots of those flights from Asia to the West Coast are difficult. A lot of times you really have to do your research outside and figure out a segment by segment route that maybe has a couple of stops. And United's site is just not good. If you say Bangkok to Salt Lake City, fill in the blank with any airport that's not a major hub in the US. And a lot of times you're just not getting the routing through most of the hubs. And so, maybe the United site just looks at Los Angeles and San Francisco. But in reality, you could be flying into a whole bunch of other airports in the US. I would say that's probably the biggest shortcoming with respect to redeeming. The other thing is that you're looking at slightly higher prices for business class than American by comparison for most of the zones. That partner availability on the website, in addition to the routings not being very good, they also don't have all of their Star Alliance partners. So it's actually a good idea to take a look at availability probably through ANA's website or through Aeroplan. Those are going to give you a little bit more in-depth options as far as the carriers. And you can also look at the Star Alliance route map, which is kind of helpful for just brainstorming, figuring out where the routes are that'll get you overseas and make it a little bit easier to use those United points. Bottom line, I'm a huge fan of United. Despite those shortcomings, if you're willing to do a little bit of work, you can end up getting a whole lot better itinerary. And with those stopovers, you're just going to get more value on your trip for the miles spent. Last but not least, I want to talk about Delta. Delta has made some huge improvements recently in terms of IT. They've added more than half a dozen partner airlines to the website. So airlines like China Eastern and GOL in Brazil, those were not available to book through the website. They just didn't show up, and you had to figure out how to look for them either on their own websites or other places. It's just really not efficient. You have to call a lot. And they've added at least 6, maybe even more partner airlines to the website. So all around, you're just seeing more availability and more options. And that's a big plus for me. The other thing is that Delta truly does have a great flying experience. We're going to talk about the cons in a minute here. Definitely the pricing reflects some of those investments, but Delta has installed Wi-Fi on all of their domestic routes, and they're making a significant investment to do that on international routes as well. So if that's something that you value, it's definitely a piece that you may consider when deciding if Delta SkyMiles are the currency that you should be acquiring. They're also a pretty efficient, well-run airline. They've got a lot of domestic routes that have flat beds. So if you look at American and United, the only real opportunity to have a lay-flat seat is going to be like JFK to LAX or to San Francisco. And Delta has quite a few of those routes. They generally have internationally configured aircraft running quite a bit more domestically. So if you just need to wake up rested for a meeting, get some sleep on the plane, that's something that might be worth considering as well. Towards the downside, they have more dynamic pricing. This is sort of a double-edged sword in that Delta's website has many more prices per pair of cities, and it just depends on what date. And they don't publish a pricing chart for their award seats. And so it makes it a little bit harder to know if you're actually getting a good deal or not, because you don't actually know what the bottom lowest price that you could be paying is. That being said, if you do a little bit of experimentation, generally it's okay to figure out. And I think overall it's probably a win that they have that sort of dynamic pricing, because it makes it more seats available overall. You maybe pay a few more miles, but you actually have the opportunity to book those seats. And I think that is a big win, especially if you're trying to find availability on a frustrating route. Speaking of frustrating routes, Australia is one of the hardest, and Delta definitely wins in comparison to United and American. So if you're looking at travel to Australia, I would definitely consider Delta. As far as earning points, there's a couple of ways that you can do it. Delta has co-branded cards through American Express. They're also partners of Amex Membership Rewards. It's a one-to-one partnership, and the points transfer instantly. So you can get away with getting a couple of co-branded cards and then transfer in American Express points to top up that balance for your next redemption. There's only a couple of negatives that I think are important to point out for Delta. One of them is that there is no international first class on partner airlines. So if you're looking for those premium cabin redemptions, business class is going to be as high as you can go with your Delta miles. You can redeem Delta miles for first class on Delta, but not on their partners. So if you want to fly Air France or Korean, the best you can do is business class, and that is a bummer. It definitely cuts down on the value of your points if you've got a lot of them, and you're looking for that luxury travel, luxury flying experience. You just can't quite get to the top level with Delta. The other thing is that just generally speaking, Delta points are worth less on a one-to-one basis than United and American. They're just higher prices for a given award. So if you're going to Asia, if you're going to Europe, and you compare head-to-head with the United and American charts, generally speaking, Delta is going to charge you more. And last but not least, they do levy fuel surcharges. So the Delta flights, especially with their partners, you can get into some trouble where you end up paying $400 or $500 for an award ticket. They also now charge fuel surcharges on flights coming back from Europe that are operated by Delta. So in general, Delta doesn't have fuel surcharges on their own flights. It's mostly just a problem with partners. But if you look at itineraries round trip to Europe, and you price them out separately as one ways, flights from the United States to Europe are way cheaper. They come out to like $80 to $100 in fuel costs. On the way back, that can get as high as $300, $400, or $500. So One of the tricks here is to combine Delta with American or United on a trip to Europe. If you don't have enough points to do a round trip on United or American to Europe, you might consider doing a one-way from the US to Europe on Delta and figure out a way to get home on American or on United. That's a good way to skip some of those fuel surcharges. Anyways, I hope you guys found this helpful and it informed some of your decisions about which cards to go after and which domestic US carriers you're going to want to be accumulating those points for your next trip. This week's international jam is called Malandro e Malandro, Mané e Mané. It is by Bezerra da Silva. He is a samba legend with more than 25 solo albums. Guy moved to Rio de Janeiro when he was like 15 years old and has just been putting out jams ever since. This one's pretty interesting. Malandro is like kind of a playful way to say a bandit or somebody that tries to get away with a little bit more. There's a lot of social context to that, and Mané is just kind of a loser. So the music's pretty interesting. I hope you guys enjoy. At the very least, it puts a smile on my face, and I hope that is the same for you. AJ and I will be back next week, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard. Wherever you are, travel safe. Hey brothers, don't be shy. Hop over to the website and join our email list for exclusive travel hacking content. If you like what we're up to, the best way you can support the show is by leaving us a 5-star review on iTunes. Lastly, we would love to hear from you, so send your show feedback to Eric or AJ at abroaders.com. We will see you next week.